Gardening, farming is easy. Living off the land. Survival tins by boiling the water in a tiny little Altoids type tin. Make charred material, charred cloth in order to do a flint and steel type fire. Put a tourniquet on somebody and leave that tourniquet on them. What happens? They'll cut and suck the snake bite. I like to carry all the tools and equipment that I might possibly need because you just never know. We think that we can, but in reality, we cannot. I will rise to the occasion. No, you won't. Which I think is a fan favorite, is the tying of the knife to an end of a stick to make a spear. Hey friends, welcome back. My name is Jason. I thought it'd be fun today to discuss some survival myths. So let's get started. I hope you don't mind me doing some chores while we have some chats. Figured I'd kill two birds with one stone. How about myth number one, since I'm on the subject here? Myth number one, gardening, farming is easy. You just throw some stuff in the dirt and food happens. Very wrong. You know, to some degree, I guess that is the case. Potatoes are fairly easy. You have good soil and you throw them in the ground and they will produce more potatoes for you. But there's also a whole lot of things that happen in the meantime. If you don't have good soil, you're gonna expose your plants, your potatoes, to pests and funguses and all sorts of things like that, and it can be pretty troublesome. So having good soil and fertilizing the soil like I've been doing, this little garden plot right here is the accumulation of a couple of years of adding compost and leaf litter from the woods and huge amounts of grass clippings. The grass clippings were probably about that high in here at one point, and it's all just rotted and decayed down and turned into pretty decent soil. At least that's my hope. I haven't tested it or anything. I'm just assuming because I've put so much stuff in here, so much crap, a couple years worth of compost in here, and chicken poop, lots of chicken poop. Every time we clean out the coop, we dump that stuff in here, and that is excellent fertilizer. So, but anyway, back on task, back on subject. Throwing stuff into the ground and just hoping that food happens is not a guarantee at all. It's definitely not the case. So you have to learn about the skill of farming, of gardening. You've got to practice it, and you got to learn what works and what doesn't work. What worked one year may not work the next year because of different climate conditions or whatever. So all these things need to be considered. So farming, gardening, even if you have the space to do it, does not necessarily mean that you're going to get food. It is tricky. I'm just going to go through these myths as they come to me. Myth number, we're going to call it number two. I'll probably lose track of what number we're on, somewhere in the middle of this thing here. But myth number two, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, you know, living off the land is a thing, right? That when hard times come upon us, that I'm just going to head off into the wilderness with my rifle, my bow and arrow, and I'm going to make ends meet just living off the land. I'm going to forage and scavenge. And just like the wild animals do in the woods, I will be one of those wild animals. And while that sounds awesome and that sounds fantastic and romantic and like a really cool challenge, you know, in a real life survival type scenario, if that was the case, you know, you're probably going to end up starving. Or you're going to get hurt or whatever. It takes a tribe of people to exist, at least for the long term. You know, short term, yeah, we could all, well, I shouldn't say we could all. A lot of us could do okay for the short term. But for the long term, I think that is where the illusion comes in. That's where the fallacies, the myths come into play. You're not just going to be able to go off and live off the land. If the grid were to go down right now and we'd be forced to grow all of our food and produce all of our own meat and everything like that, it'd be tough times, really tough times, if it weren't for a community of people. Somebody grows the potatoes, somebody grows the tomatoes, and somebody raises the cows and that kind of stuff, and you barter and trade and go for it back and forth that way. Going out and hunting is not a thing. It'll be maybe for a short period of time, but the deer in this area will be decimated. Just look at historical events. During the Great Depression, there were no deer. They did not exist here. Okay, there were some deer, but they were very, very few and far between. And it's nothing like it is now. I mean, we have deer all over the place now because of management, right? It's because we manage the resource. Brought the little chicks out. My daughter Sage is raising some chicks. She was so excited to get an incubator, and she came out every day and tried to find warm eggs. You know, the chickens had just laid the warm eggs. She put them in the incubator, and now we have 3 chicks that we're bringing outside kind of for the first time. They've been in the house because it's been cold. It's been frosting at night, and they would have died if they were out here. So they were inside the house making a stinky mess, but it's got to stop. So we're bringing them outside. We'll probably end up having to cover them at night and stuff like that, but they're outside for now. All right, myth number 3 as it comes to me. Myth number 3 as it comes to me is going to be survival tins, you know, small, compact survival kits. While in and of themselves, I think it's a great idea because they're easily carried. Put them in a pocket, put them in the console of your truck, put them in a small pocket of your pouch, whatever. They're easy to transport, easy to carry with you, and they're not a burden, so you won't leave them behind. If it was a big, heavy jumbo kit, you might leave it behind because it's cumbersome and annoying and hard to carry. So I think that they're fantastic, and I think that you should have one, and I think you should practice building them and practice with the supplies and stuff inside of them. But a couple of the fallacies that go around those survival kits is like the metal Altoids tin. Everybody says, you know, you need a metal container. So okay, backstory. I helped design a small compact survival kit called the OSH kit. And one of the major complaints about it is it's not in a metal tin, all right? So it's not in a metal tin. And everybody says, oh, it's a major miss. You know, it has to be in a metal tin because 1, you can boil water in a metal container. 2, you can make charred cloth or charred material in a metal container. Sure, yes, you can. Absolutely. And I think you should know how to do that and be able to do that. But here's my rationale behind not putting it in a metal container and not feeling it important to have it in a metal tiny container. First one is that, have you ever tried to boil water purify water by boiling it, making it safe to drink, killing waterborne pathogens by boiling the water in a tiny little Altoids type tin or even a little bit bigger one? Have you tried to do that? If you have done that, you will realize very, very quickly that it is a pain in the neck because you're going to boil a couple ounces of water at a time, and then you're going to let it cool off, and then you're going to sip that 2 ounces of water, and then you're going to have to repeat, and you're going to have to basically have you have to have fire right next to your water source, and you're almost certainly going to go through more hydration in the attempt of boiling the 2 ounces of water at a time than you would if you just didn't drink any water at all. so that's my thoughts. Try it sometime. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's my technique. Maybe it's user error. But I want you to go out and I want you to try boiling your water in a tiny little tin and see how that goes for you. Try that for a short period of time. See what happens. But next thing is the charred cloth deal. Yes, I think learning how to make charred material, charred cloth, in order to do a flint and steel type fire, I think is a useful skill, and I think it's a valid skill. I think it's important for us to continue on these traditional ways of making fire. I think it's a good idea to learn how to do a friction fire. But the point that I'm trying to make is having a way to make charred cloth in a survival kit seems a little bit silly to me. And here's why. Because in a survival kit, theoretically, in your survival kit, you should have multiple ways to get a fire going anyway. You should have fire starters of various kinds, really, really reliable ways to start fires. And if you don't, you are mistaken. Because in order to make charred cloth in your little tiny mess kit tin, Altoids tin, you need to have a fire in the first place. So you need to have started a fire somehow, some way, and then you need to be able to char the cloth so you can make your next fire. And I want to know in what realistic scenario that you can paint the picture for me, please, in the comment section. Explain to me, what realistic scenario do you foresee needing to make charred cloth? You've already got a fire, okay? Why am I making charred cloth for another fire? I'm just going to keep that fire going. I'm not going to let it go out at all costs. I've kept a fire going for 25 days straight before, because I had to start it with a friction fire to start with, and I knew I didn't want to try to do it again, so I just kept that fire going. That's not that hard to do, not that hard to keep a fire going once you've got a good coal base. Now I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, well, what if you're on the move? You know, you started a fire and it's difficult to transport coals and stuff like that. Yeah, there's ways of doing that, but yes, that is difficult. And yeah, I could make my charred cloth and I could be on the go in this hypothetical survival scenario, and now I'm off and I've got my charred cloth, and the next time I stop and need to make a fire, I can do a flint and steel fire. Sure. Okay. Maybe. Well, what realistic scenario is that going to be? Like, why would you, if you, in your survival kit, you should have multiple ways to start a fire in the first place. Just carry more ways of starting a fire. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm off. Maybe I'm off here. Maybe I need correction. Tell me what you think in the comment section. That would be great. But I think the charred cloth thing, valid skill, should be learned. I think because of long-term type survival. Let's say grid does go down. Let's say the Bic lighter company is no longer producing lighters, and they've had to push their efforts into wartime, and they're no longer supplying the public with lighters, and yeah, who knows? I'm making stuff up as we go here, but yeah. And then you're like, well, crap, all my lighters are out now. I need to get a fire going to light the wood stove or whatever. How can I do that? You don't want to be doing friction fire every time. That sucks. So maybe having some charred material around where you can do an old school flint and steel fire is a valid reason. I mean, that's a valid point. All right, I get it. But a small tin survival kit? I don't know. I don't see it. All right, let's do another one. Let's talk about medical stuff, first aid stuff. These days, you don't have your stuff together as a survivalist if you don't carry an IFAK, right? An individual first aid kit. And while I agree, I think it's very important to have an individual first aid kit. I think there's a lot of myths that go along with that. So let's say you're in that grid down, 911 isn't coming, you're on your own, right? Put a tourniquet on somebody and leave that tourniquet on them. What happens? Bad things will happen, for sure. Yeah, you've got the tourniquet and maybe you know how to use the tourniquet, but it requires advanced medical care after the fact. And currently, yes, in current times, absolutely, you should. If someone is bleeding profusely from an artery on their leg, you should tourniquet that thing high and tight, lock it down and stop the bleed, and then get them to higher care, a higher form of care, as quickly as you possibly can so they can treat that wound. But in the event of, we're on our own out here, unless you've got somebody in your crew that knows how to do that higher level of care, we're in a bad spot, right? Just having those medical supplies, those first aid supplies, doesn't necessarily solve the problem. It might delay the inevitable, perhaps, which is really, really sad to think about. But these are just things that I've heard before. I've heard people say, like I've got an IFAK, I've got a tourniquet, I'm good to go. You're not good to go. That's just what you do immediately to solve the immediate problem. And then there's a whole laundry list of things that I am not qualified to take care of. And you probably are not either, unless you're a healthcare provider of sorts. Oh, some good looking dirt. Some good looking dirt. I didn't used to get excited about these types of things. It took a little bit more. But now I get excited about dirt. This is one of my favorites, the snake bites. It's snake season right now. The snakes are coming out, it's warming up. The nights are not getting that cold anymore, so the snakes are out. We're gonna have copperheads, we're gonna have rattlesnakes, we're gonna have water moccasins, we're gonna have the whole deal. Anyway, the whole cut and suck the snake bite. Not a good idea, right? A lot of us have seen the movies, the westerns, right? The western scenes where they get bit by the snake and they cut the bite open and they suck and spit the venom out, the poison, right? Not a good idea. What if you have a cut in your mouth, right? What if not a cut, but what if you got a bleeding gum or something like that going on in your mouth? You bit your tongue, right? You got a little bit of an open wound kind of situation going on in there. you're just going to open up another opportunity for the venom of that snake to spread. So don't do that. Don't do that. If you do get bit by a snake, seek medical attention soon, very, very soon, because even the less venomous snakes can cause a lot of complications. Heart attacks, lots of things can happen if you get bit by a poisonous snake. So seek medical attention as quickly as you possibly can. However, it's still very important to remain calm, make good choices, move slowly, try not to speed up the spread of that venom around your body. Do not try to suck the poison out. Plus, if you cut into it, you cut into that and then you suck it, you're introducing all kinds of bacteria and stuff into that open wound now. You might, if the snake didn't get you, the infection might. So don't do that. Next one is gonna be an argument for sure in the comment section, but the gear heavy guys, right? I like to carry all the tools and equipment that I might possibly need because you just never know. So I carry all this crap in my pack that weighs 100 pounds, and I'm gonna carry this thing cross country. Right, you know, yeah, it's probably an opinion thing, right? I get it. Maybe this isn't a myth or anything like that because the things that I'm saying might not be a fact. But I would argue that the more crap that you're carrying, the less capable you are of movement. And movement in a lot of situations is the difference between being in the survival situation and not. If you can just get out of where the danger is, just leave, you won't be in a survival situation in the first place. So the more of a burden you have on your person, a big old giant backpack, the more you're carrying with you, the less mobile that you are. And in my opinion, the less likely you are to survive. Chances are you're not going to use half the crap in your pack. If your pack weighs, 100 pounds, I would bet a lot of money that you haven't used most of the stuff in your pack. So it just depends, So I like to travel really, really light. I carry what I need, and I try not to carry anything more. And that's worked pretty well for me so far. One day, I might end up in a ditch somewhere for the want of the one thing. Maybe. Well, it hasn't happened yet. I'll keep you posted. Next myth, or misconception, I think is that a lot of people, I'd say most of us, including myself, have been guilty of overestimating our abilities. We think that we can, but in reality, we cannot. Take, for example, last summer, I tried to walk 40 miles with a single bottle of water. So 40 miles, just walking. 1 liter of water. Turns out I can't do that, but I thought I could. I thought I was pretty confident. I didn't think for sure, but I thought I was pretty confident that I could make 40 miles. I knew it was gonna hurt. I knew it was gonna be uncomfortable, but I thought, yeah, I can make it. I was wrong. I made it to 30 miles. And I think most people, a lot of people, like on the comment section of that video that I did and the post that I did before that, a lot of people said 40 miles, yeah, no problem. It's gonna suck, but yeah, I could do it. Yeah. I think that you're wrong. I think there's some exceptions out there of people that, have really tested themselves, those ultra marathoners that run 50 miles on a regular basis without stopping. Yeah, sure. But for the most of us, regular people like you and I, we tend to overestimate our abilities. And unless we've gotten out there and really tested it in lots of different situations with different loads on our backs and different weather conditions, heat and humidity all have a factor. We overestimate what we're capable of doing. So if your get home scenario requires you to walk 60 miles, can you really walk 60 miles? Can you, with what you've got? With the calories that you're carrying, with the water that you'll have access to? Will your feet take it? Can your feet physically hold up to that kind of abuse? I don't know. But what I do ask is that you test these things before you get too confident. Before you say, for sure, I can do it. Go try it and see what happens. Oh, here's a good one. This one always gets me. I will rise to the occasion. No, you won't. So yeah, adrenaline and, things can kick in and can allow you to perform at a higher physical ability, perhaps. But when it comes to thinking, when it comes to problem solving, when it comes to a survival situation, quite the opposite is generally the case. You will not rise to the occasion. You will fall to the level of your experience, your training, to the work that you put in ahead of time. So many people have said, you know, I've heard everybody, a lot of people say this, you know, a lot of people say, you know, if it came down to it, you know, I'd be able to do it. I'd shoot straight and I'd be able to fight. And, you know, yeah, well, okay. Yeah, sure. You could kung fu the crap out of somebody if the time came. Well, so could the other guy. Everybody wants to win, right? So that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense when you think about it. You're not going to rise to the occasion. You're going to fall to the level of your training. And if you have trained hard and you have practiced and you have really put in the time and the effort, then maybe you'll be able to solve that problem and it won't be a survival situation, perhaps. But don't count on it. Don't count on being able to figure something out in the heat of the moment. Chances are your brain will not work. I've been in situations, we've all been in situations where our brains just kind of they lock up and they don't it seems like everything's moving in slow motion when it's only a matter of seconds. It seems like it's you know, it's taking minutes to go by. It seems like hours when it's only 30 seconds that has passed. And you know, that kind of stuff can freeze you up. People will run, they'll fight, or they'll freeze, you know. And you won't know what you will do in any particular situation unless you've been in that situation. And it will also vary from situation. You could be presented with the same situation twice and react completely different each time. So it just depends. It's hard to say exactly how you will respond to a survival situation unless you've really been in it, and unless you've thoroughly tested yourself. I think our testing of ourselves are big rock. Our grenade. I think our testing should be difficult. I think it should be, a training should be really difficult. It should simulate the real thing as much as we can. It should be more difficult than the real thing. You know, if we've trained to do a 40-mile walk home, because that's what we anticipate might be the worst case scenario, and then it turns out we've only got to walk 20 miles in the real situation, piece of cake, right? You get what I'm saying. Last one I'll mention, which I think is a fan favorite, is the tying of the knife to an end of a stick to make a spear. While yes, totally awesome, and I do condone this activity for the pure awesomeness factor, probably not that beneficial in a survival situation, because you've taken your knife and you've attached it to a big long stick, which makes it more difficult to use for knife-like tasks. Now, I would say the one caveat, the one situation perhaps where you might benefit from doing this is like you're surrounded by a pack of wolves. Not really realistic, I guess. You're surrounded by hyenas in the Serengeti, and they are wanting to eat you. Having something you could keep them at a distance with is good, but really just a sharpened stick would probably be pretty effective too, and you'd still have your knife available. So anyway, lashing your knife to the end of a stick, probably not that good of an idea. People, you see it in the books, you know, they're standing in the river spearing fish with their knife attached to a stick. What you're going to end up doing in that situation is you're going to, one, hit rocks with your knife and potentially significantly damage your knife. Two, even if you were fortunate enough and skilled enough to stick a fish, without a barb on the knife itself, the fish comes off very easily unless you pin it to the ground, and again, you're damaging your knife. I would suggest not tying your knife to the end of a stick unless you were surrounded by hyenas. Thanks for watching, friends. Thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't done so already. Cannot wait to see you on the next one. Please share this video. Please leave lots of comments. Tell me some more survival myths that give me one of your pet peeves. I want to hear one of those. See ya.